Yeah, welcome everyone. My name is Daniel from TACEO, and yeah, as I said, I'm going to be talking about the topic of MPC-enabled proof markets and going into the motivation. ZK proof markets are a very hot topic at the moment. You can, of course, outsource these heavy costs of the proof generation to powerful servers, and even more hot topic at the moment, use dedicated hardware to speed up the proof generation even further. In a normal workflow, a user might just request a proof from a proof market. The proof market assigns this job to some kind of prover node, and then the user must provide their witness input to the prover delivers the proof and receives some kind of payment for the work that he's done. And often neglected is this privacy loss aspect of the delegator, that you essentially have to give this prover your secret witness, your secret input, because he has to do the actual proving. And one technology that can help here is secure multiparty computation. And while ZK might be the privacy technology that most people here are very familiar with, MPC is also another very common privacy technology that essentially allows multiple untrusting parties to compute some function on their secret inputs without revealing them, and then some output is revealed to one or more parties. Most MPC protocols are based on some form of linear secret sharing, where linear operations are then free to compute, and this free is kind of under quotation marks because you still need to do the actual computation, but parties do not need to interact with each other. However, for things like multiplication of secret values, you have to communicate with each other. The MPC parties do, and so these are a little bit more costly. And the secrecy of the shared values is guaranteed as long as no more than some configurable threshold of parties collude with each other and are honest. MPC is also a very flexible technology, and you can use, for example, the same fields for your MPC protocol as you do in zero-knowledge proof systems. And you can also build MPC protocols that work over elliptic curve groups, allowing you to do stuff like scalar multiplications. And so one thought process that has happened over the last few years is, what if the function we execute in the MPC protocol is actually the ZK prover itself? We have our private witness, which is the secret input, which you share among the MPC nodes, and then the proof is just the public outputs. And this is exactly the setting that is matched by this MPC proof market setting, where the user is now again requesting a proof from the MPC proof market. We select some nodes. The user then shares his witness to these nodes, and the nodes together do the MPC computation, and then the proof gets delivered back to the user, to the market, and the MPC nodes that contributed to the computation, they get some kind of reward. So this topic is often also called collaborative snarks, and these MPC use cases are just a small use case of collaborative snarks. And in the next part of the talk, I just want to give you an overview of why MPC and ZK is a nice combination together in this use case, and some of the efficiency concerns and challenges that are still out there. There are only a handful of papers in this topic. I've given them here on this slide, and I would implore you to have a closer look at these papers if you're interested in the topic of MPC combined with zero knowledge. But in the interest of time, I will not go into too much details here, but rather try to give you an overview of the MPC friendliness of these building blocks and why this is a good fit for MPC. So first, very common building blocks in zero-knowledge proof systems are FFTs, and essentially FFTs are just a linear operation in the input vector, and then due to the linearity of the secret sharing scheme, we can just have the parties essentially perform the FFTs on their local shares to get shares of the output. And this is very nice because all of the operations are essentially local. You do it on the same field as you do in the zero-knowledge proof. You can even reuse some hardware acceleration for this process. A very similar thing happens for multiscalar multiplications, which is a linear operations in, for example, the scalar. And in most use cases that we need for zero-knowledge proofs, the points are actually public, for example, in commitment schemes. So you can again perform multiscalar multiplication on the shares of the secret scalars, and again can reuse the hardware acceleration. Polynomial operations are at the heart of many ZK proof systems. So again, we have, for example, polynomial addition, just a linear operation. Parties can do it on their own shares. And then for multiplication, we go through an FFT, do element-wise multiplication, which, again, as mentioned before, requires some interaction between the parties. And then we go back through an inverse FFT. Polynomial division is also pretty nice if the divisor is public, which is also often the case in ZK proof systems. This is, again, just a linear operations which parties can do locally, and otherwise the cost is about 2 multiplications. And finally, evaluation. Again, evaluation often happens at public evaluation points, which, again, parties can do on their own local shares of polynomials. Going into a little bit more complex building blocks, for example, sum checks and product checks. So for a sum check, we just have a very simple proof via commitment to a related polynomial, and this related polynomial can again be computed with just subtractions and division by a public value. So again, parties can do this operation on their local shares, and then we have to do a polynomial commitment. So this is essentially just the cost of the polynomial commitment scheme again. And also in the multivariate sum check case, there are also very efficient protocols to do it in MPC. For the product check, it's a little bit more complex since the helper polynomial that we need here is a little bit more complex to compute. We essentially need a helper polynomial where the values are the partial product, so the products up to a certain index are the values of this polynomial, and there are specialized MPC protocols to compute this partial product in a constant number of rounds, but we still have linear communication. So it's a very common thing that you take some part and replace it with a more specialized MPC protocol. Talking about polynomial commitment schemes, for very popular ones like KZG and inner product arguments, the commitment is essentially just a multiscalar multiplication with public points, which is very nice for multiparty computation. And then for KZG, the opening is again just a commitment to a related polynomial, which we again can arrive at by division by public values and subtraction, and then again a polynomial commitment. For the inner product argument, you have some logarithmic number of rounds where you do some kind of random linear combinations, which are also pretty good for MPC. However, the situation is not as nice for Frye-based commitment schemes, where the actual low-degree tests are actually very MPC-friendly. However, the big bottleneck is the vector commitments. So you commit 2 evaluations of some polynomial over a very large domain, essentially, and then the hash function calls themselves are the cost, because since the values are secret, you have to evaluate the hash function in the MPC protocol. And even if you use something like Poseidon, which is not only ZK friendly, but also pretty MPC friendly, this is still a very impractical overhead. And these commitment schemes are also the bottleneck in some of the other commitment schemes or that are using some Merkle tree commitments. As a first trick to work around this issue, we can have MPC parties commit to their shares instead of the underlying values. So this means that parties now no longer have to evaluate the hash functions in MPC. However, each party does their own Merkle tree and adds it to the proof. So this means the proof size grows by a factor of n, the number of MPC parties, and also the verifier work grows by this factor, since he needs to verify much more Merkle trees and recombine the shares and continue with the verification process. And then we can work around this issue even a little bit more by adding a recursion step that is commonplace anyway in many Frye-based systems, where you have essentially a recursive verifier that handles all of this new MPC stuff, does all of the verification, all of the recombining, and then, because there is no need for privacy anymore in this recursive verifier, you can do it outside of MPC. Finally, one of the challenges that many academic papers do not talk about, the papers mostly focus on the compatibility and efficiency of these proof system building blocks, and only talk about extended witness generation and parsing. And extended witness generation is essentially the process of going from the input, the witness input, to something that can be used in the proof system, like the witness columns in the Planck assignment table, the full R1CS witness, whatever. And if you think about something like ZK11, the actual input might be to a machine learning model is very small usually, but the whole execution trace might be multiple gigabytes in size. So this is a very large difference in the actual input and the full extended witness. Also, these witness transformation might have transformations from circuit evaluation to circuit satisfiability problems. For example, in the field inverse in zero knowledge, we usually don't compute this inverse directly, but rather inject the result and then just show that B times A is equal to 1. However, if this is a secret witness, we actually need to compute the B value in multiparty computation, and therefore we are going back again to circuit evaluation, which might be more costly for a lot of problems. And there might be many gadgets that are MPC unfriendly in this way. So thank you for this, for your attention. In conclusion, I hope to have given you some overview of why ZK and MPC can be a very good fit. And the main building blocks are already very MPC friendly, but there are still a lot of challenges to solve to kind of bring this field forward. So more research is needed, and especially more research in this intersection of MPC and zero knowledge, because there are hundreds of ZK research papers every year, but only a very handful of them are in this MPC zero knowledge intersection. And also something to help push users to actually play around with this stuff, and this is something that we are working on now and over the next few months, is to actually try to bring this to kind of production systems that are already out there that users are familiar with, ZK DSLs, to also essentially enable them to do MPC proofs. And if you're interested in this topic, I would implore you to join the Telegram group for collaborative snarks or contact us directly. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions?
Hi, thanks for the talk. I actually have two questions. Do I have time for two questions? All right. So, first question is, you mentioned that we have protocols for multivariate subjects. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, essentially, the main operations there are, from what I remember, essentially building the bookkeeping table to have essentially fast provers, and they are also just essentially doing linear combinations in each step. So this is also very efficient there. And one of the 4 papers on the paper slide actually covers the multivariate sum check case, and they show that this can be done very efficiently. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So second question. So different papers deal with the malicious security case differently. Yeah. So I don't know, the EOS paper, for example, does something ad hoc and sort of clever there.
Yeah,
but
so
other papers go black box. How would you summarize the status about that? But
yeah, so that's also something that's very interesting. As you said, there's one paper that takes an approach that the ZK computation itself is already kind of error checking. And so you can kind of use this property to kind of reduce the need for malicious security in the MPC protocol. Of course, you can take a malicious secure MPC protocol and just treat it as a black box, but this is more expensive. But of course, this requires a lot of custom work because it's not that easy as just trusting the ZK computation. You have to do a little bit of extra like the EOS paper did. So it's a trade-off that you can either have a generic solution that works, is a little bit slower, or you have to invest some investigation and proofs for the specific proof system, I would say.
Thank you.
Okay.
So maybe the next speaker can already set up, and then we have time for one more question.
Hey, thanks for the talk again. More on the whole idea of using MPC and ZK to build proofs that are private and also not built in the user's device. Isn't there a way isn't there an incentive, a perversive incentive for all of the MPC parties to always store the encrypted data? Because there's no way to really slash them if they ever disclose them, and there might come a point in the future where this data becomes valuable, it might be extractable. So I was wondering, is there a mechanism to actually like slash them or penalize people that eventually share their secret shares?
Yeah, that's an interesting area of work that's not really present in the current proof markets, because they just select a single party and then you have a little bit more interaction with this party. In the MPC setting, you would have to select many nodes, and then depending on your threshold, if one of them is behaving honestly, then you're good enough. But if you have like an economic way to select these nodes, for example, via bids, then you can just maliciously bid very low or very high, depending on what you need, to get selected, and then kind of try to steal the secret. So you cannot use kind of normal strategies to select these nodes, but have to have either some kind of additional trust with TEE, MPC nodes, or have some randomness in there and stuff like that. So it's an open question, I would say, to really how to select these nodes in a good way.
Okay, thanks a lot.